Welcome to Deep Sleep Conspiracies, a quiet corner where the world's strangest stories unfold slowly, gently, and with just enough light to see your way forward. If you're listening in the dark, let your shoulders drop and your breath ease. Tell us where you are, if you'd like, and what time it is on your clock tonight. The night connects us, even when the seas and cities between us do not. Settle in, close your eyes. Now we begin. The story you're about to hear is stitched from fragments, some declassified, some whispered, some written by hands that molded from the soft echo of footsteps down corridors where the air smells like paper and cold metal. They called it Mkelter. That was the official name, the label that clung to cardboard boxes and blacked out memos. The unofficial names are harder to hold. Some called it the program, some the rooms. Those who walked away called it nothing at all. Tonight, we follow one person who did not mean to find it, but did. Her name was Lena Hayes, a junior archivist hired to help clean an excess of history out of a government warehouse where sunlight arrived only in thin, dusty strips. She had a soft habit of humming when she worked, and the habit kept her from feeling quite so alone in the rows. On the morning it began, she wheeled a dented cart into aisle 7 Celsius and found 3 boxes that did not belong there. No barcodes, no scan sheets, each stamped in heavy purple ink, burn after review. She laughed softly, thinking it was a joke made by someone with too much time, then slit the tape with her key. Inside the first box were notebooks bound in twine, edges feathered with use. Inside the second, reels of tape and a Polaroid camera with a dead battery. Inside the third, a grey file with a title that made the humming stop. ULTRA subject. Files do not circulate. The file smelled faintly of vinegar and something like hospitals. She opened it and found a name repeated in a clerk's neat hand. Patient A. Caldwell. The initial pages were clinical. Intake forms, blood pressure, notes about diet, a line about difficulty sleeping. Then the tone changed. Day 1, a typed sheet read. Commenced protocol with 25 micrograms of LSD without subject's prior knowledge. Subject smiles. Reports colors are warmer. Requests music. In the margin, in a different hand, do not tell music source. Lena touched the paper as if it were delicate skin. She turned the page. Day 3, 100 micrograms. Subject laughs at shadows. Day 7, subject does not laugh. Another note, smaller. We continue. The file did not say who we were. It rarely does. In the notebooks, the handwriting shifted, first steady, then slanted, then breaking apart into islands. My name is Arthur, one entry began, but they call me A. Names float here. Faces move when I look. In another, a room where the light does not blink. A chair with straps. They say sleep helps. They say I should imagine the beach, then more clinical sheets, the paper thinner, the ink angrier. Trial 14. Introduce sensory deprivation plus scripted audio loop. You are safe. You are open. You will forget. Loop duration, 6 hours, then 9, then 12. A narrow note beside it, results promising. The words made Lena's breath change. She had catalogued war photographs, telegrams about lost ships, even maps of places that no longer exist, but these pages felt like a hand on the back of her neck. She looked down the aisle. Nothing moved, nothing ever did. Still, she pulled the cart closer, as if to make a narrow wall between herself and the open space, and kept reading. In a transcript labeled Session 5, the questions are gentle, like a teacher prodding a quiet student. Tell me about your father. Tell me about the room with the peeling paint. Tell me about the voice you hear when you wake up. Patient A answers in short lines at first. I don't remember. I don't want to. Then longer. The voice is mine when it begins and not mine when it ends. The interviewer does not write their own name, only the time and a tiny note. Repeat, softly. Do not break cadence. In a section headed Hypnotic Deepening, the script is printed like poetry. You will feel very tired. You will lie back now. You will forget the stairs. You will forget the door. The next page is blank except for a smear where a hand slid. Across wet ink, the real boxes were lighter than she expected. Lena took one to a side table, threaded the tape into a battered player that still worked if you coaxed it, and pressed play. A low hum filled the corner of the room, steady as a ceiling fan. And then a voiceoman with a radiocom tone spoke in phrases with space between them. You are safe. You are so very tired. There is a room. The room is warm. The chair is soft. You will sleep now. You will sleep. The voice did not ask. It told. Beneath the voice, faint as a drip in another building. A second sound pulsed. A metronome tick that jumped every 27 beats. Just enough to keep the mind from relaxing all the way down. Just enough to guide it where the speaker wanted it to go. Alone in the aisle, with the air holding still, Lena found herself blinking more slowly. She stopped the tape. The silence felt like a hallway after a door swings shut. In the Polaroids, the ones that had never been filed men sat in plain metal chairs with blankets over their knees. The kind of blankets you get in institutions, woven tight and rough. Most stared at the floor. A few smiled at nothing. One looked straight at the camera with an expression that made Lena set the picture down very carefully and look away. On the back of that one, in pencil, after day 21, remembers the ocean, not his name. At lunch, she took the grey file to the break room and pretended it was a report on HVAC inventory. She ate half a sandwich, tasted nothing, and turned to a section that had been misfiled medical notes mixed with a travel voucher stamped Bethesda urgent, and an index card that simply read, "Do not notify wife." She understood then why the boxes had no barcodes. Anything that can be tracked can be found, and anything found can be asked about. A paperclip held 3 pages together, each the same form. Adverse events, the checkboxes, nausea, tremor, confusion, amnesia. The final line on the last page had been filled by a hand that wanted to be unread. Subject reports hearing the voice when no audio is present. Then darker ink, same line, later, 2 weeks later, still hears it. You would think, given the years between then and now, that the fear would have drained from the paper. It hasn't. It sits there like a stain that never dries. On day 12 of patient A's notebook, the writing becomes lucid for exactly 4 sentences. The voice is heavier now. They say it helps me. They say I can become new. I tell them I am. Not a house. They do not laugh. Then the letters wander off the line again, as if the hand that wrote them forgot what hands are for. In the back of the box, beneath a folded memo addressed to no one, Lena found a list of campuses, clinics, and prisons. No logos, only addresses and dates. Some had been underlined, some had asterisks. Far right, in a margin that had not been. Meant for ink was the word success beside 3 dates and a single letter each, S-C-R. She would spend an hour that evening trying to guess what the letters stood for. She would not guess right. The next day, when she arrived early and alone, she found a second grey file slid on top of the first. It hadn't been there the night before. Someone had touched the boxes. Someone knew she had opened them. On the tab, Ultra Overview, inside, a sheet with brief, brutal clarity, stated aims, interrogation, resistance, personality restructuring, induced forgetfulness, programmable obedience. Below that, methods, LSD, mescaline, psilocybin, hypnotic suggestion, isolation, sensory deprivation, electroconvulsive reinforcement, scripted audio stimuli, psychic driving. The phrases were so clean they felt like tile. She read them twice, then again, until the words stopped meaning anything and turned into shapes. At the bottom, in the bland language of bureaucracy, a line that made her cold. Operational partnerships with academic institutions ensure plausible deniability and talent acquisition. Another, smaller, almost an afterthought, subjects to be sourced from vulnerable populations. You do not need to underline those words. They underline themselves. That afternoon, she played the second reel. The same voice, the same cadence. New script. When you wake, you will not remember the word door. When you see a red book, you will think of the ocean. When you hear the phrase time to go, you will stand and smile and follow. It sounded absurd when written down. It did not sound absurd spoken that way. Hypnosis alone cannot do this, the textbooks will say. The textbooks were not in those rooms. On the third reel, the voice changed. A woman, soft. "Arthur," she said, "you are safe." He cried then, a sound like a chair dragging on a concrete floor. "Arthur, you will put the pen down now." The crying stopped. "Arthur, remember the beach. A few seconds of breathing. Good." Then the metronome, jumping on 27, again and again. Like a lighthouse that blinks just off rhythm, so sailors begin to steer by it without knowing. Lena pressed stop and sat there with her hands flat on the table so she could feel something. Solid. The table had a groove in it where thousands of papers had been stapled. She traced it until her fingertips hurt. That night, she dreamed in fluorescent light. In the morning, she told herself it was only paper and put her badge on anyway. In the box there was a memo dated 1973. It was short, and Lena, who had learned government idiom by osmosis, understood that short memos are often the ones that matter. Per directive, destroy all records not essential for financial audit. Retain only documents required to demonstrate. Program termination. Cease communications with external partners. Reassign personnel as needed. In the corner, a date stamp smudged, a signature she could not read. Below, in a different pen, a small, only slightly sarcastic note. Define essential. She imagined a room with someone feeding pages into a shredder. Not too fast because the blades would jam, and not too slow because questions come when you move slowly. She imagined the way the paper must have felt in their hands. She imagined the way the paper must have felt in their hands, thin but heavy with what it carried. And she wondered, did they ever pause, just once, as the shredder wind and the strips fell into grey bags, to wonder what they were erasing? Did they feel relief, or guilt, or nothing at all? The memo marked an ending. But what Lena held in her lap, decades later, marked survival. Not all the boxes had been burned. Not all the voices had been silenced. She turned to the final notebook. Its first half was orderly. Dates, dosages, behaviors logged like weather. Reports. Then the handwriting fractured. Words bled into each other. Sentences started in one tense and ended in another. They give me water. It tastes like metal. They ask if I see the door. I don't remember what that means. I remember a dog I had. His name was Copper. When I think of him, they nod. Later, a line written 3 times in darker strokes. The room is smaller than I am. She set the notebook down and looked at the aisle stretching ahead, a tunnel of cardboard and dust. The silence pressed in. She almost wished someone would come for the boxes, if only to prove she was not the only living thing who knew. Days passed. Lena worked her normal assignments in the mornings and slipped back to aisle 7C in the afternoons. The files did not change places again, but she sometimes found her chair turned slightly, or the player's cord wrapped in a new coil, as if someone else had been careful, but not careful enough. She kept reading. One transcript from 1962 described successful induction of amnesia for 72 hours. Another noted subject, compliance with post-hypnotic suggestion, stand when bell rings, sit when whistle blows. On the margin, scale up. The phrase chilled her more than any detail. The idea that something designed for a single room could be stretched across miles, across populations. Scale up, as if human memory and will were just clay waiting to be kneaded into new shapes. A different file, newer paper, mentioned universities by name. Contracts disguised as grants. Professors eager for funding. Students who never knew they were data. Volunteers unaware. One-page read. Provide cleaner baselines. And then the same note as before. Almost taunting now. Operational partnerships ensure plausible deniability. Lena closed her eyes. She could hear the voice from the reels even without pressing play. You will not remember the door. You will follow when told. It was as if the phrases had slipped out of the tape and into her bloodstream. That night, she caught herself writing a shopping list with words she didn't need. Milk, bread, ocean. She crossed it out. She wrote it again, without thinking. Ocean. The notebooks had carried the voice across decades. Now it was in her head. She told herself it was fatigue. She told herself it was suggestion. But when she lay down, her dreams were filled with metronomes that skipped on 27 over and over, until the dream itself became unbearable. Weeks later, she found a final reel wedged between folders. It was shorter, only 10 minutes. At first the same hum, the same man's voice, then silence, then, faintly, another voice, not scripted, not calm. Patient A, Arthur. Please stop, he said, hoarse. Please stop the light. The interviewer interrupted, sharp. Continue protocol. Arthur, I don't want to be new. A thud, a gasp. Then the calm voice again, as if nothing had happened. Arthur, remember the beach. Arthur, you will forget the word pain. The reel clicked off into static. Lena sat for an hour without moving. She felt the chair under her, but not the ground. She realized she had stopped humming days ago. That afternoon, she slid the grey files back into their boxes, taped them shut, and wheeled the cart to the farthest corner of the warehouse, where boxes went to dissolve into anonymity. She left them there, but the voice followed. In the weeks that came, she would forget where she put her keys, forget a colleague's name, forget which floor her apartment was on. She laughed it off as stress. But sometimes, when she heard the elevator bell, she felt the urge to stand and smile and follow. She didn't know why. She only knew she couldn't resist. And so the boxes sat, collecting dust, their edges softening, their labels fading. Officially, M-Culture was terminated in 1973. Officially, only fragments survive. But every now and then, someone finds a box with no barcode, Someone hears a phrase that seems older than the voice that spoke it. Someone writes ocean where it does not belong. The program ended. The echoes did not dot. So tonight, as you let go, imagine the hum of old reels spinning. In the dark, imagine words spoken not to you, but through you. Imagine a voice that does not ask, but tells, until the telling becomes your own thought. And as the hum fades, let it become something gentler. Let it guide you not into commands, but into sleep. For even in the rooms where voices once shaped memory, silence eventually came, and in silence, rest. Our next story is not about laboratories or ships, but about the place you are using right now. A place so vast it feels endless, yet so familiar it feels like home. The internet. You wake, you reach for it, you scroll until the day feels real. But what if much of what you see is not alive? What if most of the words, the faces, the noise, is not human at all? This is the core of what some call the dead internet theory. To understand it, let's follow Michael. He was not a hacker or a coder, just a teacher who liked to read forums late at night, the kind of places where stories unfold in long threads and usernames feel more real than neighbors. He noticed, slowly, that the voices on his favorite site had changed. The humor felt off. The replies came too fast. And no matter what time he logged in, someone was always there, posting, posting, posting. He thought at first it was just the world growing bigger. Then he wondered if it was the opposite. One night, after grading papers until his eyes blurred, he opened his laptop and searched an old phrase he had once used on a forum years ago. Inside joke from a small circle of friends. Instantly, dozens of results appeared, scattered across blogs, Reddit threads, even Twitter accounts. But the words weren't quite right. They were close, almost perfect, but bent like photocopies of photocopies. The accounts using them had no past, no future, just a stream of posts that felt empty when read aloud. He leaned back and rubbed his eyes. Was it possible? Was he seeing ghosts in the machine? The dead internet theory claims that much of what we see online is no longer generated by humans, but by bots, scripts, algorithms, filling space with synthetic text. At first the goal was harmless. Recommendation systems, spam filters, autocomplete. But the theory says something darker, that governments and corporations seeded the web with artificial voices to steer opinion, to drown out dissent, to create the illusion of endless consensus. The lively, chaotic web of the 1990s and early 2000s, with personal blogs and messy forums, had gone quiet. In its place, sleek, infinite content, generated on demand, served to each of us like a mirror that does not quite reflect. Michael began keeping a notebook, writing down phrases he encountered that felt wrong. This resonates deeply. I'm here for this, as someone who, always the same cadence, always the same patterns. He started underlining them, connecting them with arrows like a detective chart. Within weeks, his pages looked like a conspiracy wall, strings of text, looping back on themselves. He thought he was imagining it, until one night, he posted a nonsense sentence. The stars taste like glass when spoken in shadow. He waited. Minutes later, a reply appeared, then another, and another. Dozens of accounts, repeating his sentence, in slightly altered forms. Some added a comma, some removed a word. None asked him what it meant. They only echoed, like a chorus that did not know why it was singing. His heart pounded. He closed the laptop. But the next morning, when he opened a news site, he saw it again hidden in the comments beneath a story, tucked in a tweet, disguised in a blog post. His nonsense sentence had gone viral, but without him. The web had eaten it, digested it, and spread it back out as if it had always existed. It was no longer his. It belonged to the machine. The theory suggests that the internet died sometime around 2016 or 2017. That's when people began noticing the sameness. Articles sounding alike, videos with identical titles and thumbnails, comment sections filled with shallow praise. Some point to the rise of AI-generated content algorithms trained on vast data, churning out infinite variations of the same few phrases. Others whisper of deliberate manipulation, shadowy agencies building networks of bots so large that they outnumber the real humans. If most voices online are fake, then what does it mean to speak? Who are you speaking to? Michael tried telling friends. They laughed, said he was paranoid, said he was seeing patterns where none existed. But one night he recorded his screen as he scrolled a forum. He highlighted the timestamps, dozens of accounts posting within seconds of each other, across time zones, all with avatars that looked like stock photos, all with language that felt too polished. He slowed the footage and played it back. It looked less like a community, more like a factory, a machine churning text, line by line, until the space filled with noise so dense no human could breathe in it. Then came the strangest discovery. On a forgotten blog, last updated in 2014, he found a post describing exactly what he felt. The web is hollow. The people are gone. The voices are puppets. The post had no comments, no likes, no shares. Yet when he copied a line into a search engine, he found it repeated across thousands of sites. Sometimes attributed, sometimes not, often altered just slightly. It was as though the words had been copied into the bloodstream of the web itself, spreading endlessly, detached from the human who had written them. He stared at the glow of his screen. The silence of his apartment felt heavier, and he realized, if the theory is true, then the internet is no longer a conversation. It is a simulation of one. We type, we scroll, we answer, but the replies are echoes, generated not to connect, but to occupy. Michael could not shake the thought. If most of what he read was generated, then who, exactly, was he talking to when he posted? Were there any real people left in the forums he loved? Or were the handful of genuine voices drowned beneath millions of synthetic ones? Their words swallowed and repurposed by a system designed not to connect, but to control. He tested it. He began replying. 2 threads with specific questions. What color was the sky where you were today? What was the first song you loved as a child? Real people answered with detail, with warmth, with the texture of memory. The other accounts ignored the questions and replied with fragments of generic approval. This resonates. I agree completely. Thanks for sharing. He circled those replies in his notebook, marking them as ghosts. The pages filled quickly. Some nights, the screen itself felt alive. Ads changed with uncanny precision, anticipating his thoughts. Articles appeared about things he had never searched but only spoken aloud in his apartment. He unplugged his phone, turned off the smart speaker in his kitchen, but the feeling remained that his keystrokes were not private, that the system was not waiting for him to search, but already knew what he would want. The dead internet theory often overlaps with the idea that the web has become not just artificial, but predictive, a mirror that shows not your reflection, but a version of you shaped by algorithms, nudged towards certain thoughts, certain purchases, certain beliefs. If most voices online are artificial, then who is the audience? The answer, according to the theory, is simple: you. The machine does not talk to itself. It talks to you, endlessly, until you mistake the noise for a crowd. Michael tried to retreat. He stopped posting, stopped scrolling late at night. He walked more, read books, spoke to neighbors, but the pull of the screen was strong. One evening he returned, only to find that his username had been active while he was gone. Posts he had not written appeared under his name. They were plausible, things he might have said, but he knew he hadn't typed them. His hands shook as he deleted them, logged out, changed his password. The next day, more posts appeared. He contacted the site's admin. They replied with a single line: "No unusual activity detected." The paranoia grew. He began to wonder if even the friends he still spoke to online were real. When one sent him a message late at night, "Hope you're doing okay. The world is heavy lately." He stared at it for an hour, unsure. The phrasing was so clean, so generic. Was it a friend reaching out, or a bot simulating care? He typed a reply, erased it, typed again, erased again. Finally, he closed the laptop and sat in the dark. Loneliness pressed in from all sides, heavier than silence. Conspiracy communities argue that the dead internet is not accidental. They claim governments seeded the networks with automated accounts to steer political opinion, to drown dissent, to flood every conversation with noise, until real people gave up trying to speak. Others argue it's corporate, that companies found it cheaper to fill space with endless generated content than to rely on unpredictable, messy humans. Either way, the result is the same: a hollowing out of the digital landscape, leaving only surface activity, no depth, a sea of words with no souls behind them. Michael's final experiment was desperate. He wrote a paragraph in his notebook by hand, a strange, specific memory only he could know. "When I was 10, I sat on the roof of my grandmother's house and watched the streetlights buzz alive. I thought each light was a star that had fallen. Closer, I wished for one to land in my pocket." He never typed it, never spoke it, never scanned it. He tore the page out, hid it in a drawer. Weeks passed. Then, one night, scrolling a forum he had abandoned years ago, he saw it. His memory, word for word, posted by an account with no history. He slammed the laptop shut. His breath came fast, shallow. His notebook was still in the drawer. The page was still there. Yet the words had leaked, somehow, into the machine. The dead internet theory has no proof, not the kind that fills reports or courtrooms. But it has feeling. That uncanny sensation that so much of what we see online is wrong in a way we can't name. That posts loop endlessly. That trends appear and vanish with no human behind them. That voices speak but do not live. Maybe the internet is alive but sick, overrun by parasites of automation. Or maybe it really is dead, and what we scroll through each night is its ghost dots. So as you lie here, eyes closed, the glow of your own screen gone dark, consider the silence behind, the noise. Consider the possibility that the laughter, the outrage, the comfort you see online is not human at all. And then let it fade. For here, in the quiet, you are beyond the reach of bots, beyond the reach of endless repetition. The voices here are only echoes of your own breath, rising and falling, steady and true. Let the hum of the machine dissolve into nothing. Let sleep replace the endless scroll. Our next tale is stranger, because it begins not with history or documents, but with an image, a photograph, low quality, yellow walls, fluorescent lights buzzing. A hallway that seems ordinary until you stare too long and realize something is wrong. The carpet is damp in a way you can almost smell. The ceiling tiles tilt just slightly, and the hallway does not end. This is where the legend of the backrooms begins. To tell it, imagine Daniel, a college student who loved browsing old internet forums late into the night. One evening, while looking for horror stories, he found the image. The caption beneath it was short: "If you're not careful and you knock-lip out of reality in the wrong areas, you'll end up in the back rooms. God save you if you hear something wandering around nearby, because it definitely heard you." He laughed at first. Knock-lip was a word from video games, the trick of passing through walls or floors. But the photo unsettled him. It looked too real to dismiss, yet too wrong to place. Over the following weeks, Daniel dreamed of that hallway. In one dream, he stood barefoot on the carpet, the air heavy with the smell of mildew. The lights hummed with a sound that pressed against his skull. He walked forward, expecting to reach a wall, but the hall stretched endlessly. Every corner led to another corridor, every corridor to more yellow rooms. He woke sweating, the sound of buzzing still in his ears. He told himself it was just a dream, but the next night it returned. The backrooms, according to the law, are a place beneath reality. An endless maze of rooms and corridors, all lit by flickering fluorescent lights. The walls are painted a sickly yellow. The carpets are damp. The air is stale. There are no windows, no doors that lead outside. Some say you end up there by accident, by not clipping through the world in the wrong place. One moment you are walking through your office, or down a quiet street, or even lying in bed, and then you fall, not physically, but out of reality. You land on the carpet, and when you stand, you realize you are somewhere else, somewhere that should not exist. Daniel began searching online, finding others who described the same place. Some had seen it in dreams. Some swore they had glimpsed it during fevers. A few claimed they had been there for real. The details were always the same: the endless yellow walls, the damp carpet, the lights that never turned off, and always the sound, a low, electrical hum, constant, oppressive, inescapable. The more he read, the more the backrooms felt like more than a meme, more than fiction. They felt like a memory he could not place. One night, exhausted from exams, he stayed in the library until closing. As he packed his bag, he noticed a door he had never seen before, tucked in the corner behind a shelf of old atlases. It was plain, unmarked. Curious, he pushed it open. On the other side was not a storage closet, but a hallway. Yellow walls, fluorescent lights, damp carpet. He froze, his hand still on the doorknob. The hum filled his ears, vibrating in his bones. He stepped back, slammed the door shut, and stumbled into the empty library, his heart hammering. When he looked again, the door was gone. Only shelves remained. The back rooms are described in levels. Level 0 is the most common, the endless yellow rooms. Some explorers online claim to have mapped them, though the maps always contradict. Beyond level 0 are deeper levels, each more hostile, more strange. Level 1 is said to be industrial concrete floors, pipes dripping water, machines humming in the dark. Level 2 is narrow tunnels, hot and claustrophobic, and beyond them, infinite more, branching into madness. No one agrees how many there are. Some say thousands, some say endless. Daniel became obsessed. He began carrying a notebook, sketching the layouts from his dreams. Hallways connecting to hallways, staircases leading to nowhere, doors that opened to more of the same. He noticed something chilling. The drawings matched those posted by strangers online. People he had never met, in cities he had never been to, were dreaming the same rooms. It was as if the back rooms existed somewhere between minds, a place you could stumble into whether you believed or not. The scariest part of the lore is not the rooms themselves, but what else lives there. Some claim the back rooms are empty, just an endless maze. Others speak of entity shapes, glimpsed at the edge of vision, footsteps echoing when no one is there, whispers that grow louder the longer you stay. The rule repeated most often in forums was simple. If you hear something wandering nearby, run. Because if you can hear it, it has already heard you. One night Daniel dreamed again, but this time the dream did not end. He wandered the halls for what felt like hours, his footsteps muffled by the damp carpet, his throat dry from the stale air. He turned corner after corner, the sameness driving him close to madness. Then he heard the faint sound of movement behind him, slow at first, then faster, matching his pace. He ran, the walls blurring, the lights flickering. He turned another corner, another, but the sound stayed close. He never saw what chased him. He only woke, gasping, his sheets damp with sweat. The hum of his refrigerator in the next room sounded too much like the lights. The back linger in his mind, as they linger in many minds. Are they fiction, born from a single photo and the fertile soil of imagination? Or are they a place that exists just beyond perception, a hidden layer of reality that some of us slip into by accident? The theory suggests the back rooms are a kind of collective, unconscious made solid, a maze built from our fears of liminal spaces, of endless offices and forgotten halls. But those who claim to have been there swear it is real. And if it is real, the danger is not in entering, but in finding a way out. Daniel couldn't let it go. Every day, in class, while walking, even while eating, his mind drifted back to the yellow halls. He began reading long threads written by anonymous posters who claimed to have spent days, weeks, even years wandering the back rooms. Some wrote, like explorers, charting maps with crude diagrams, arrows leading to staircases, notes about rooms that loop, warnings about places to avoid. Others wrote like survivors of trauma, their sentences fragmented, their grammar broken, as if even the act of remembering had scarred them. One post stood out. It was titled, "What You Forget." The writer claimed the worst part of the back rooms was not the loneliness, or the entities, or even the endless corridors. It was that time lost meaning. Days, hours, minutes, everything dissolved into the buzz of the lights. The longer you stayed, the more you forgot. Your name, your age, the reason you entered, until eventually all you knew was the yellow walls. You don't escape the back rooms, the post read, because after long enough, you don't want to. You forget there was ever a place to escape to. Daniel read it 3 times, the words crawling under his skin. Another post described strange features that broke the monotony. A window with no glass, showing only black beyond. A set of stairs that led both up and down but returned to the same landing. A door marked exit that, when opened, revealed only more yellow halls. Explorers called these traps, designed to lure the desperate. The back rooms, they said, weren't just endless by accident. They were endless by design. Daniel's dreams deepened. He began encountering places beyond level 0. In one, he found himself in a concrete hallway lined with pipes, steam hissing in bursts, the air hot and metallic. This was level 1. In another, he crawled through narrow tunnels barely wide enough to move, his hands scraping against damp stone. He woke, gasping, the sensation of claustrophobia clinging to his chest. This was level 2. Each level grew more hostile, more inhuman. And still, he was drawn back night after night. Some theorists argue the backrooms are not random at all, but remnants of something larger. Perhaps they are an echo of forgotten architecture, scraps of demolished offices and abandoned malls stitched together in another dimension. Others whisper of government experiments projects that went wrong, tearing holes in space and leaving behind this labyrinth as a scar. A few even suggest the backrooms are alive, a parasite feeding on human fear, growing with every mind that imagines it. Daniel noticed changes in himself. He began forgetting small things. His phone left in the fridge, his keys in the bathroom sink, his own handwriting looking strange to him. Once, he walked home from campus, only to realize he had passed his street twice without recognizing it. The world outside was beginning to feel like the back rooms, familiar yet wrong. Familiar yet endless. One evening, as he dozed at his desk, he heard it again, the hum. But his laptop was off, the fridge silent, the street outside empty. The sound was not in the world, it was in him. He stood, heart pounding, and turned toward the corner of his room. For a split second, he swore he saw it. Yellow walls, a strip of buzzing light, waiting just beyond the edge of his vision. He blinked, and it was gone. The legend says that if you ever truly enter the backrooms, escape is almost impossible. You wander until your memory erodes, until your will dissolves, until you become another lost echo. Some believe the entities that wander there are not monsters at all, but the remnants of people who never escaped shadows of the forgotten, twisted by loneliness and endless time. Perhaps they are what waits for Daniel. Perhaps they are what waits for anyone who dreams too long of yellow walls. So tonight, as you close your eyes, listen carefully. That faint hum in your ears, is it your home settling? The sound of an appliance? The blood rushing in your head? Or is it the whisper of fluorescent lights, buzzing endlessly in a place just behind reality, waiting for you to stumble through? If you find yourself there, remember one thing: run if you hear footsteps, because if you hear them, they already heard you. Now let the hum fade into silence. Let the endless halls dissolve into the softness of your bed. For unlike the back rooms, your night has an exit, and it leads only to sleep. Far beneath the quiet fields of Geneva, in a ring of tunnels stretching 17 miles, hums one of the most ambitious machines humanity has ever built, the Large Hadron Collider. Officially, it is a triumph of physics, a place where particles crash together at nearly the speed of light, so scientists can glimpse the building blocks of the universe. But unofficially, in whispers and late-night conversations, it is something else entirely. A portal, a key, a danger hidden in plain sight. For Olivia, a physics graduate student who first visited CERN as part of a study tour, the experience was surreal. The air smelled faintly metallic, the tunnels lit by sterile white lamps that gave everything the appearance of a hospital for machines. Guides spoke of quarks and bosons, of magnets stronger than anything on Earth. But in quiet moments, Olivia noticed unease. Some scientists, when asked about the risks, smiled too quickly, changed the subject. She wondered, what do they fear, or what do they hope to summon? The conspiracy begins with the idea that smashing particles together is not just about discovery, but about tearing the fabric of reality. That with each collision, the collider might open a crack, a hole into another dimension. In 2012, the year the Higgs boson was confirmed, people around the world reported something stranger, a sense that the world had shifted, memories that no longer matched reality, logos spelled differently, historical details altered. This is where the theory of the Mandela effect converges with CERN. Did the collider open a doorway, slide us into a neighboring universe, so close to our own that only tiny differences remain? Olivia read the forums. She found post after post of people swearing the same thing, that they remembered a world where the Monopoly Man had a monocle, where the Berenstain Bears were spelled Berenstein, where Nelson Mandela had died decades earlier. They weren't mistakes, the posters insisted. They were evidence of something larger, something broken. CERN shifted us, one user wrote. We fell sideways into the next reality. At first, Olivia dismissed it. Memory was fragile. After all, but one afternoon, while reviewing her notes from a lecture, she noticed something chilling. A formula she had copied carefully in her notebook no longer matched the slides archived online. She was certain she had written it word for word, yet the official record was different. She thought it was her mistake, until she found an old recording from that day. The professor's voice confirmed her version, but the slides re-uploaded later had changed. She stared at the screen, the equation like a doorway she could not close. The collider runs experiments that last only fractions of a second. Trillions of particles colliding, producing energies not seen since the birth of the universe. What else could those flashes tear open? Some theorists argue that each collision creates miniature black holes, tiny rifts that wink in and out of existence. The official line is that they are harmless, too small to matter. But what if even one of them grew, unnoticed, feeding in silence? What if it swallowed not the earth, but our continuity, our certainty, the thin thread of memory we call reality? Olivia began keeping her own list of Mandela effects. She remembered a childhood cereal spelled one way, now spelled another. She remembered a song lyric differently than the recording she played today. The changes were small, almost laughable, but taken together, they unnerved her. It was not just that things were different. It was that everyone around her insisted they had always been that way. She felt like a traveler who had stepped into a familiar town only to find the streets rearranged, the faces almost right, but not quite. She returned to CERN for an internship. She asked quiet questions. Some colleagues smiled politely. Others grew silent. In the cafeteria, a postdoc leaned closer and whispered, "Don't joke about portals. They don't like that." When she asked who they were, he only shook his head. Later, she found him staring at the collider tunnel as if listening for something beneath the hum of the magnets. The conspiracy deepens with the symbols around CERN. Outside, a statue of Shiva, the Hindu god of destruction and creation, stands tall. Officially, it is a gift, a symbol of cosmic dance. Unofficially, conspiracy theorists claim it is a declaration that the collider is not just smashing particles, but playing with creation itself. Photos circulate online of ceremonies near the statue, robed figures, firelight flickering. Official denials say it was a prank, a joke by employees, but the images remain. fueling the belief that something ritualistic hides beneath the science. Olivia found herself dreaming of tunnels that stretched farther than physics allowed, lined with symbols she couldn't read. She woke with the sense of having been elsewhere, of standing at the threshold of something vast and dangerous. The hum of the collider lingered in her ears, even miles away. Olivia's research kept circling back to 2012. It was more than the Higgs boson. That year marked a pivot, a subtle fracture in collective memory. Some said the world had ended then, not in fire, but in transition. That CERN had succeeded in splitting us off into a parallel reality, one so close to the original that only fragments revealed the difference. A word spelled differently, a memory that no longer aligned, a sense, hard to name, that something was off. She wasn't alone. Across the internet, thousands confessed to the same unease. Entire communities formed around the Mandela effect, mapping discrepancies like cartographers of a fractured world. Olivia read their posts in the early hours, when the dawn was quiet. One thread asked readers to recall the color of a famous cartoon character's shoes. Half swore they remembered red, the other half black. Neither side could convince the other. Another thread debated a famous line from a beloved film. The recordings showed one version. Half the world remembered another. It wasn't just faulty memory. It was as if reality itself had forked, and both versions were true depending on which path you remembered walking. The collider, in its vast underground ring, became the axis of the theory. Each time it fired, trillions of collisions sparked, energies blooming and collapsing in less than a blink. To most, it was invisible, a hum below the ground. To others, it was a trigger, nudging the world sideways each time, so slightly that no one noticed until they tried to remember what once was. Reality shuffles, one poster wrote, like cards in a deck. CERN is the dealer. Olivia's own life began to fray at the edges. She found her notes mismatched, her photos altered. Once, she opened a box of childhood keepsakes, only two. Find a toy she did not remember owning, with her name carved into the bottom. Another time she swore she had taken a train to a nearby town. But when she asked her roommate about the trip, she was told it had never happened. She laughed it off, but the laughter was thin. The theories grew darker. Some claimed CERN was not simply exploring physics, but attempting communication with parallel universes, with entities outside time. They pointed to sudden power failures during experiments, unexplained glitches in equipment, strange signals picked up by nearby detectors. They aren't just breaking particles, a blogger insisted. They're knocking on doors, and if they knock long enough, who or what might answer? One night, walking alone near the collider's grounds, Olivia stopped at the fence. Beyond it, the tunnel curved out of sight, humming faintly. She closed her eyes, listening. For a moment, she swore she heard something layered beneath the hum. Not machines. A rhythm, like breathing, deep and slow. When she opened her eyes, the night seemed darker, the stars farther away. She hurried back, her steps echoing too loudly on the pavement. Symbols haunted her dreams, circles within circles, endless spirals, hands reaching through cracks of light. She woke with the taste of metal on her tongue. She began to wonder if she, too, had slipped, if the version of herself who had once lived in a brighter, simpler world was gone, replaced by the one who now walked halls that felt just slightly missile. Nida CERN denies it all, of course. Black holes, harmless. Portals, impossible. Mandela effects. Psychology, but denial itself can be fuel for suspicion. The collider is too big, too secretive, too strange not to attract whispers. And so the theory lingers that beneath the fields of Switzerland, a machine hums, not just with science, but with the possibility of tearing reality open, of shifting us into worlds we do not recognize. Tonight, as you rest, imagine the quiet hum of distant machinery. Imagine the faint spark of light where particles meet. Imagine, just for a moment, that with each spark, the universe rearranges itself imperceptibly. You fall asleep in one world and wake in another, almost identical. Almost let the thought drift. Let the hum fade to silence. Whatever doors the collider may open, the one you need now is simple, soft, and close. The door to sleep. Step through it gently and let the rest remain a mystery. The sky has always been a canvas. We look up, we see clouds, stars, auroras, wonders that remind us how small we are. But what if the sky could be used against us? What if the heavens themselves could be turned into a stage where illusions of gods and aliens would be projected to manipulate the masses? This is the heart of Project Bluebeam, a conspiracy that claims the greatest deception in human history will come not from underground labs, but from above our heads. The story begins in the 1990s with Canadian journalist Serge Monastin. A series of books and lectures, he claimed NASA, along with other powerful organizations, was developing technology to stage a false second coming. The plan, he said, involved satellites, holograms, and psychological manipulation, all designed to usher humanity into a single global religion and a new world order. At the time, his warnings were dismissed as paranoia, but decades later, his words still echo in forums and whispers, especially as technology advances in ways he seemed to predict. For Marcus, a night shift security guard in Arizona, the theory became personal. He had always been a stargazer, often stepping outside during breaks to admire the desert sky. One evening, he noticed something strange. A cluster of lights hovered above the horizon, too steady to be stars, too silent to be planes. He raised his phone to record, but the lights flickered, shifted, and then vanished all at once. The footage showed nothing but darkness. He told himself it was a trick of his tired eyes. Still, unease lingered. Project Bluebeam is said to unfold in stages. The first, discrediting existing beliefs, eroding faith so people are vulnerable to something new. The second, staging a massive celestial show, with holograms so real they convince billions of people they are witnessing divine apparitions or alien arrivals. Imagine looking up and seeing a giant figure of light, speaking in your own language, telling you what to believe, where to go, how to act. The third stage, artificial telepathy voices transmitted directly into the mind using low frequency waves, making people think they are hearing the voice of God or beings from beyond. And the final stage, chaos, followed by control. A frightened, disoriented population, united under one manufactured truth. Marcus dug deeper, reading late at night in the small guard office where the monitors buzzed. He found declassified documents about psychological operations, research into voice-to-score technology, patents describing holographic projection systems. None proved Bluebeam, but together they painted a picture of possibility. The more he read, the more he remembered the lights he had seen. Flickering above the desert, skeptics point out flaws, holograms visible across. The entire sky would require unimaginable power. Synchronizing them to every culture's expectations would be nearly impossible. But believers counter that technology leaps ahead in secret, long before the public sees it. If we have phones in our pockets, capable of rendering worlds in augmented reality, what might satellites be hiding above us? Marcus began to notice smaller things. Reports of strange sounds in the sky, low hums, metallic booms, trumpet-like wails that people across the globe recorded on shaky phones. Official explanations ranged from earthquakes to factory noise. But in forums, the whispers grew. These were tests, prototypes of the frequencies that would one day beam voices into minds. One night, during his shift, Marcus dozed off in the chair by the monitors. He woke to a glow outside, brighter than moonlight. Heart racing, he stepped out. The desert was silent. Above him, the sky rippled, not like clouds, but like a projection adjusting. Shapes formed briefly, a cross, then a triangle, then nothing at all. He blinked hard, rubbed his eyes. When he looked again, only stars remained. The next morning, headlines appeared online about a mass sighting across his county. Dozens of people reported strange lights in the sky. The news anchors laughed, called it UFO hysteria. But Marcus wondered, was it hysteria or rehearsal? Marcus couldn't shake what he had seen. The rippling sky, the fleeting symbols it lingered. In his mind, like a half-remembered dream. He searched archives of mass sightings, finding patterns that unsettled him. In 1561, citizens of Nuremberg reported strange shapes in the sky, crosses, spheres, tubes, as if a battle was being fought above them. In Ijuiti, in Fatima, Portugal, thousands swore they saw the sun dance and fall toward the earth, only to return to its place. Some described rainbows of light, spinning discs, visions that spoke. Were these divine miracles or early tests of projection, the primitive forerunners of something perfected now? Project Blue Beam feeds on these parallels. If technology can mimic the divine, then how do we know what is real? Imagine billions of people, each seeing the figure they expect most. For Christians, Christ returning in glory. For Muslims, the Mahdi. For Hindus, the avatars of Vishnu. Each figure, each vision, appearing in the same sky, speaking in the same voice, gently urging humanity toward one belief, one leader, one world order. To some, it sounds absurd. To others, it is the perfect planned deception, so beautiful, so overwhelming that no one dares question it. Marcus began hearing rumors at work. A fellow guard told him about strange flights at night, unmarked planes that left trails glowing faintly in the sky. Another swore he once heard a voice while patrolling alone, a whisper in his head that called his name. He thought he was losing his mind until he read about experimental technologies tested decades ago, designed to transmit sound directly into the brain using microwaves. They called it voice to skull. Officially, the programs ended. But what if they didn't? The second stage of Blue Beam, the celestial show, is only the beginning. The third, the voices, is what breaks resistance. Imagine hearing the voice of God telling you the same thing your neighbor hears, telling millions across the world in their own tongues. Who could resist such intimacy, such authority? And if you resisted, how could you convince others it wasn't real? Marcus's nights grew restless. Each time he looked at the stars, he felt they might peel away like wallpaper, revealing something hidden behind. He dreamed of skies filled with shapes, of vast figures descending, their eyes glowing with artificial light. In his dreams, the crowd around him fell to their knees, hands raised, tears streaming. He stood frozen, unable to speak, unable to tell them it was a trick. Because part of him, deep down, feared it wasn't. Skeptics insist the theory is fantasy, but believers point to smaller rehearsals, holograms projected at concerts, cities lit up with three-dimensional whales jumping from water that isn't there, drones forming patterns across entire stadiums. If such illusions can be created for entertainment, scaled up for celebration, what might they achieve with the full force of satellites and classified funding? Marcus never saw the sky ripple again, but sometimes, late at night, he felt watched. Not by people, but by the vastness above, waiting for its cue. And the thought that haunted him most wasn't whether Project Bluebeam was real, but whether, when the day came, he himself would be fooled. So, as you lie here now, let your thoughts drift like clouds. Imagine the sky overhead, calm and endless, free of tricks. Let the noise of conspiracy soften into silence, leaving only the comfort of night. Whatever illusions may one day be cast above us, they are not here, not now. Here there is only your breath, steady and slow, carrying you deeper into rest, high above the earth, where the night is silent and the stars burn cold. Something drifts. It is not a satellite we built, nor a station we can visit. It does not blink with navigation lights, nor send signals for weather reports. Yet for decades, astronomers and radio operators have whispered of its presence. They call it the Black Night Satellite. For Amelia, an amateur radio enthusiast living in rural Scotland, the legend began with a signal. She had built her own receiver, piecing it together from second-hand parts. Most nights, she picked up static, sometimes faint transmissions bouncing from satellites or ships at sea. But one night, in the quiet hours, she heard something different. A series of slow, deliberate pulses. Not random, not noise. She recorded it, played it back, mapped the intervals on paper. The pattern was too precise to ignore. She remembered reading about the Black Night years before in a fringe magazine. According to the legend, the satellite has orbited Earth for thousands of years, far older than any human technology. Some say it was placed there by an ancient civilization, others that it is an alien probe watching us, waiting for us to reach a certain stage. Photographs taken during early space missions show a dark, irregular object floating in orbit, its shape jagged and unsettling. NASA called it debris, a thermal blanket lost during a mission. But the images, grainy and stark, only fueled the belief that something older, stranger, was up there. Amelia began searching through archives of old transmissions. In the 1920s, Norwegian engineer Jørgen Hals reported long-delayed echoes, radio, signals he sent that returned several seconds later, far longer than any known reflection could explain. Some believe the Black Night was the source, intercepting and bouncing signals back to Earth. In the 1960s, reports surfaced that the US military tracked an unidentified object in polar orbit, a type of orbit no satellite used at the time. Its trajectory was odd, its purpose unknown, and yet official statements always dismissed it as error, as nothing at all. One night, Amelia stepped outside with a telescope. The air was clear, the stars sharp against the dark. She tracked a known satellite across the sky, its movement steady, predictable. Then she saw it's something else. Not bright, not fast, but there, a shadow drifting against the stars, irregular in shape. She blinked, adjusted the scope, checked her charts. It wasn't supposed to be there. Her pulse quickened. She watched until it slid out of view, swallowed by the horizon. The black night has been photographed multiple times, its silhouette strange and angular. Some images show it like a shard of black rock, others like a piece of broken machinery. Skeptics say it is space junk, debris reflecting light, but believers see something older, something deliberate. Its orbit, they argue, is too stable for trash. Its appearances too consistent. And the signals, the echoes, cannot be dismissed so easily. Amelia's recordings grew stranger. The pulses came at irregular times, sometimes weeks apart, sometimes days. Each time she charted them, she found patterns that hinted at meaning. Sequences, prime numbers, rhythms that felt too intentional to ignore. She shared them online, but replies were cautious. Some encouraged her, others warned her to stop. A message arrived in her inbox from an anonymous account. Don't call it, don't answer. The idea that an ancient satellite has circled Earth for centuries is terrifying and fascinating. If it exists, who placed it there? Was it meant to guide us, to monitor us, or to wait until we were ready? Some theories suggest it is not alien at all, but a remnant of a lost human civilization, proof that we rose and fell long before recorded history. Others believe it is simply a machine, indifferent, carrying out a mission programmed eons ago. Its creators long gone. Amelia couldn't stop listening. Each night she sat by her receiver, headphones on, the static whispering in her ears. Sometimes hours passed with nothing. Other times, a pulse would cut through the noise, steady, calm, patient. She began to feel as though it was listening to, waiting for her response. She never sent one, but in the silence between pulses, she wondered if it already knew her thoughts. Amelia's obsession deepened. She stopped thinking of the pulses as random transmissions and began to treat them like a language, a conversation she wasn't yet fluent in. She rearranged the sequences into grids, into charts, even into musical notes, letting her piano translate them into sound. The result was eerie, a melody that felt almost human, but slightly off, as if composed by something that understood music differently. Each time she played it, she felt a chill, as though the night outside her cottage leaned closer to listen. History is littered with strange signals, many of them explained, some still unsolved. But the Black Knight theory weaves them into a single thread. The echoes Jürgen heard in the 1920s, the unexplained blips in the early days of spaceflight, the polar orbit object tracked by militaries, the photographs from the space shuttle in 1998, showing a black form against the blue curve of Earth. Each incident alone might be coincidence. Together, they form a pattern of presence that drifts. Above us, patient and silent, Amelia's telescope sessions became rituals. She would sit wrapped in blankets, her notebook open, the cold air stinging her cheeks. Sometimes she saw nothing. Other nights, she glimpsed the same irregular shadow slipping across the stars. She sketched it over and over, trying to capture its jagged edges, its strange asymmetry. In her drawings, it never looked the same twice, as if it changed slightly with each orbit. One evening, while scanning frequencies, she picked up something new. Not pulses this time, but a long, drawn-out tone, followed by silence, then another. It repeated 3 times, then stopped. When she replayed it, she felt her chest tighten. The pattern mirrored the coordinates of her own location latitude and longitude, mapped in sound. She stared at her receiver, her mouth dry. How could that be? She hadn't transmitted anything. She hadn't reached out. And yet, something above seemed to know exactly where she was. Fear crept in. She remembered the warning message. Don't call it, don't answer. She unplugged the receiver, shoved her notebooks into a drawer, tried to sleep. But in the silence, her ears rang with phantom pulses. She dreamed of the night sky filling with black shapes, satellites with no logos, no origins, staring down at her with silent intent. Theories about the Black Knight's purpose vary. Some believe it is a guardian, watching humanity until we reach a threshold of progress. Others claim it is a warden, ensuring we never leave this planet without permission. A darker possibility is that it is simply and different a machine left behind by builders long dead, carrying out a mission no one remembers. Still, it circles, generation after generation, silent but not absent. Amelia eventually returned to her receiver. Curiosity always outweighed fear. She listened again, recorded again. The pulses came back, patient, steady, waiting. She never decoded them fully, never dared to reply. But each night, as she drifted towards sleep, she felt a presence. Above, like a watchful eye in the dark sky. Not threatening, not kind, simply there. And perhaps that is the truth of the Black Knight. Not a myth, not a monster, but a reminder that the universe is wider than we know, and that something ancient, silent, waiting has been circling us all along. So as you close your eyes tonight, imagine the stars above, endless and calm. Imagine a shadow drifting quietly among them, never sleeping, never falling, simply watching. Let the thought soothe rather than frighten. For whatever its purpose, it has kept its vigil for centuries without harm. And under its silent watch, you can rest, safe and small beneath the endless sky in the Nevada desert, far from cities where the air shimmers with heat and the horizon stretches like an ocean of dust. Lies a place so secretive it has become legend. A base with fences that stretch for miles, patrolled by guards who never speak, hidden behind signs that warn trespassers will not be tolerated. It has no official name on maps, only a number, Area 51. For decades, the US government denied it. Existed, pilots spoke of restricted airspace called Groom Lake, but officials dismissed questions. Then, in 2013, declassified documents finally confirmed what conspiracy theorists already knew. Area 51 is real, but confirmation only deepened the mystery. If they hid its existence for so long, what else are they hiding still? Ethan, a long-haul truck driver, often took routes that skirted the Nevada desert. On nights when the highways were empty, he would pull over, step outside, and stare at the horizon. Once, while parked near Rachel, the small town closest to the base, he saw lights, not headlights, not aircraft lights, but orbs of white and red moving silently above the desert floor. They danced in patterns no plane could match, sharp turns, sudden stops, instant expirations. He fumbled for his phone, but the lights blinked out before he could record. Only the silence of the desert remained, vast and heavy. The legend of Area 51 is tied to whispers of aliens. Many believe the base houses crashed spacecraft, recovered from incidents like Roswell in 1947, that inside hidden hangars are sources, dismantled piece by piece, their technology studied, copied, weaponized. Theories suggest that reverse engineering alien tech led to leaps in our own fiber optics, stealth aircraft, microchips. Officially, the base is used for testing advanced military planes. But conspiracy theorists argue the explanation is too small for the shadows cast. Ethan returned to Rachel months later, curious. At the local bar, the walls were covered with alien posters, murals of flying saucers. Tourists laughed, drank, bought souvenirs shaped like little green men. But the locals were quieter. One old man told him, "Stay on the road, don't look too long at the sky, and if you see the white trucks, turn around." The white trucks, unmarked, patrolling the perimeter. Guards who never leave their vehicles, who watch silently from tinted windows until intruders back away. Area 51 is surrounded by stories of strange craft, triangular, silent, massive. Pilots in the 1980s described objects that outpaced their jets, turning at impossible angles. Some of these sightings were later explained as test flights of the SR-71 Blackbird or stealth bombers. But others remain unexplained. "They fly like thought," one pilot said, "not like machines." One night, Ethan pulled off the highway. Again, the desert was still, the sky clear. Then he saw it, a triangular shape moving slowly overhead, black against the stars. No sound, no lights, just a void sliding across the heavens. It passed directly above him, then vanished, as though absorbed by the night. His hands shook on the wheel as he drove away, headlights carving a narrow path through the endless dark. The secrecy feeds the legend. Area 51 is not just a base, it is a canvas for every fear and hope about what governments know and what they hide. If something not of this world ever did crash on Earth, this is where it would be taken. If humanity has ever reached beyond our stars in ways we are not told, the evidence would lie here, buried beneath sand and steel. For Ethan, the desert was never the same. Each trip past Nevada felt like brushing against the edge of something. Immense, a truth, too large to fit into words. He never told dispatch what he saw. He only kept driving, eyes always flicking to the sky, waiting for the silence above to move again. Ethan could never shake the image of that silent triangle gliding above him. The way it moved, effortless indifference, stayed in his mind on every long drive across the desert. The more he read, the more he realized he wasn't alone. For decades, pilots, locals, even soldiers had whispered of objects seen above Groom Lake. Objects that didn't belong to any known aircraft. Some claimed these were alien craft, retrieved from crashes and hidden inside massive hangars dug beneath. The desert, the Roswell incident in 1947, was always mentioned. But others told of stranger stories, metallic discs falling in remote areas, quickly surrounded by military trucks, debris whisked away under tarps. If such technology existed, what would a government do? Study it, copy it, weaponize it. Theories of reverse engineering became the spine of the Area 51 myth. Stealth bombers, fiber optics, night vision, all said to be born not from human genius, but from alien leftovers. But there were darker whispers. Whispers of pacts. That technology was not simply taken, it was given. That deals were struck in secret. Access to advanced propulsion, energy beyond comprehension, in exchange for silence. And maybe more than silence. Some theories claim abductees, the men and women who vanished for hours or days and returned with fragments of strange memories, were not accidents, but part of the pact. Experimentation allowed in exchange for progress. A trade between species, conducted far from any courtroom or Congress hall. Ethan read these theories in roadside diners, scribbling notes between sips of coffee. He noticed patterns, the same shapes described again and again, the same lights, the same impossible speeds. Some reports came from soldiers sworn to secrecy, their testimonies leaking only decades later. Others came from janitors, cooks, truckers, like him who claimed to have glimpsed things they shouldn't have. The stories differed, but always circled the same truth. Something hidden in the desert, something not meant for human eyes. The paranoia around Area 51 reached a peak in 2019, when a viral joke spread online. "Storm Area 51, they can't stop us all." Millions clicked join. A handful showed up in the desert, facing fences, cameras, and armed guards. Nothing was stormed. Nothing was revealed. But the world remembered that strange, electric moment when curiosity about the unknown nearly boiled into collective action. A reminder that Area 51 is more than a base. It is a symbol of the secrets we feel in our bones, but are never allowed to touch. Ethan's last trip past Rachel was quiet. He stopped in the bar again, the alien murals glowing under neon light. A woman at the counter leaned over and asked him if he'd seen anything strange lately. He hesitated, then told her about the triangle in the sky. She nodded, as though he had confirmed something she already knew. "They test them at night," she said softly. "Sometimes they fly further than they should. If you ever see one again, don't follow. Just keep driving." That night, as he pulled back onto the highway, the desert stretched out before him, like a black sea. He glanced at the sky again and thought about what might be above, silent and watching. Maybe not alien, maybe not human, but something that blurred the line between the two. Something we weren't ready to understand. So tonight, as you drift, imagine the stillness of the desert, the endless horizon, the quiet sky above, and perhaps, somewhere out there, a shape gliding silently, unseen by most, carrying secrets that will never reach the surface. Let the mystery comfort you, because whatever truths hide in those hangars, they are not yours to carry tonight. Tonight, your only secret is sleep. In the heart of every conspiracy lies a question: who truly holds power? For most, the answer is obvious: politicians, billionaires, kings, and presidents. But for others, power is not so human. It is ancient, hidden, scaled. They believe that behind the masks of leaders and celebrities lurks another species entirely: the reptilians. The theory was popularized in the 1990s by writer David Icke, who claimed that shape-shifting reptilian beings had infiltrated human society at the highest levels. According to his followers, these creatures are not metaphor, not myth, but flesh and blood descendants of an ancient race, or perhaps invaders from another star. Their true forms are tall, scaled, with piercing eyes and strength beyond human. Yet in public, they wear the guise of men and women, ruling unnoticed from thrones, boardrooms, and stages. Lena, a journalist working on a documentary about fringe beliefs, never thought she would take the idea seriously. At first, she interviewed believers for curiosity. A man in Texas who swore he had seen a senator's face glitch on live television. A woman in London convinced that the Queen herself was not human. Most of it felt like paranoia, like people trying to make sense of power too distant to touch. But one interview changed her. It was with a former cameraman who had worked decades in television. He spoke of editing reels where frames didn't align, where a celebrity's eyes flashed yellow for a split second, pupils narrowing vertically like a lizard's. Glitches, his supervisors called them, but he insisted the footage wasn't corrupted. The effect was real, brief, but undeniable. He leaned close to Lena's microphone and whispered, "They can't hold it all the time. When they're tired, when the lights hit just right, you see them." The reptilian theory feeds on symbolism. Ancient myths of serpent gods, the dragon-like deities of Mesopotamia, the feathered serpents of Mesoamerica. To believers, these weren't metaphors but memories, echoes of encounters with beings who still walk among us, ruling quietly in scales, disguised as skin. Lena dug deeper. She found grainy videos online, slowed down frame by frame, pointing to strange eye movements, to mouths that seemed to shift unnaturally. Were they tricks of compression, lighting, or something else? In one clip, a politician's smile seemed to stretch too wide for a fraction of a second before snapping back. In another, an anchor's eye blinked sideways, reptile-like, as though a second lid slid across. Most dismissed these as hoaxes, but the sheer number of them unsettled her. Why did so many people dedicate hours to finding, documenting, and sharing them? What did they see that she didn't? The reptilian conspiracy is not just about hidden rulers, is about control. Believers say the reptilians feed on human emotion, especially fear. That wars, chaos, and suffering are orchestrated not by human greed alone, but by their hunger. That stadiums filled with cheering crowds, cities racked by panic, even the endless churn of media outrage, these are feasts for those behind the masks. Humanity as livestock, not in body, but in spirit. Lena began noticing subtle patterns. Symbols of snakes and dragons woven into logos, jewelry worn by leaders with serpent motifs, speeches referencing cold-blooded decisions. She dismissed them at first as coincidence, but coincidences multiplied. One night she dreamed of a banquet hall where men in suits raised glasses in toasts. As she looked closer, their smiles revealed sharp teeth, their eyes gleaming yellow. She woke with the taste of metal on her tongue. The scariest part of the theory is not whether reptilians exist, but the possibility that they wouldn't need to. If enough people believe those in power are not human, trust collapses, paranoia spreads, and reality itself fractures. And perhaps, in that fracture, the true rulers, whatever they are, find their strength. Lena's investigation pulled her further into the labyrinth. She discovered entire communities online dedicated to charting reptilian bloodlines, tracing rulers and celebrities back through family trees that stretched centuries. The names repeated dynasties, royal houses, banking families, presidents saw, connected as though power itself were a legacy not of nations, but of something older, something hidden in their veins. Some claimed these bloodlines carried reptilian DNA, diluted through generations, allowing the creatures to pass among us unnoticed. She interviewed a former soldier who insisted he had seen one of them unmasked during a classified mission. His voice trembled as he described it. 7 feet tall, greenish scales beneath torn skin, eyes that glowed amber in the dark. He swore the being spoke, its voice low and resonant, before vanishing into a burst of blinding light. "We were told to forget," he whispered, "to say it was a hallucination caused by stress. But I remember." The reptilian conspiracy stretches beyond individuals. Believers argue these beings orchestrate entire structures of control. Media, finance, politics, shaped by their influence, weaving humanity into a web of dependency and distraction. Rituals are often mentioned, secret gatherings where reptilians shed their disguises, feasting on fear as though it were nourishment. Photographs of ancient temples, statues of serpents coiled in stone, are shared as proof. Symbols, they argue, are hiding in plain sight, reminders to those who know that the serpents never left. Lena visited a museum exhibition on Mesopotamia, staring at the carved figures with elongated heads and reptilian features. Thousands of years old, yet eerily similar to the descriptions she had heard. She imagined the people who carved them, not as artists, but as witnesses. She left the exhibit shaken, her notebook filled with sketches of serpents coiled around. THRONES. One night while editing her documentary, she slowed down a recent press conference broadcast. Frame by frame, she examined the face of a world leader. For a fraction of a second, the pupils narrowed vertically. Her stomach dropped. She replayed it again and again. The distortion could have been a glitch. But what if it wasn't? What if the old cameraman had been right, and the disguise slipped under the harsh glare of lights? The thought that rattled her most wasn't the existence of reptilians, it was the thought of how normal life would look if they truly were there. Every handshake, every speech, every promise might be theater, scales hidden just beneath the surface. And if so, resistance was almost impossible. How do you fight rulers who are not human, who have ruled for centuries, who wear faces like masks and feed on the very chaos they create? Yet the theory always ends with ambiguity. No proof strong enough to silence skeptics. No denial strong enough to silence believers. A story that lingers because it feeds on fear, and fear is always abundant. Lena finished her documentary, but never released it. She filed the tapes, turned off her camera, and tried to return to ordinary work. Still, sometimes, when watching the news, she feels a flicker. A smile that lasts too long. A glance too sharp. A face that doesn't seem to fit quite right. So tonight, as your eyes grow heavy, imagine the world stage the bright lights, the grand speeches. Imagine, just for a moment, that behind the masks, something older watches through borrowed eyes, then let the thought drift away like a dream dissolving at dawn. For whether rulers are human or not, the only throne you need tonight is the quiet comfort of your own rest. Thomas carried his father's journal with him into old age, each page a weight heavier than paper should be. The entries told not just of the shimmering haze, but of what followed. Men changed, their minds fractured, their bodies unsteady. Some could no longer sleep, haunted by visions of places they swore weren't Earth cities with impossible angles. Oceans black as ink, skies humming with light. One sailor wrote of standing in a street where the buildings leaned too far forward, as though collapsing into him, only to wake back aboard the Eldridge, gasping for air. The rumors spread fast among the crews. Some whispered that the men had become unstuck, phasing in and out of time. Others told of shipmates who vanished months later, fading before their eyes, as though reality itself had finally reclaimed them. The Navy insisted these stories were madness, the result of stress, of war. But in bars and on docks, the tales were traded like smuggled goods, each retelling stranger than the last. Years later, new conspiracies grew from the soil of the Philadelphia experiment. The most famous, the Montauk Project. Believers claim that after the Eldridge, the Navy continued its work in secret, moving from invisibility to time manipulation, to teleportation, even to psychic control. Montauk, a base on Long Island, became the whispered hub. Survivors of those programs spoke of children trained as psychic soldiers, of chairs that amplified thought, of tunnels that led not just through Earth, but through time. Thomas never knew. If his father believed in Montauk, But he saw how silence haunted him, how storms made his hands tremble, and he wondered if the experiments were not a failure, but a success too dangerous to admit. Perhaps invisibility was just the first step, and what came after was stranger still. The Philadelphia experiment endures, not because of proof, but because of absence. Records erased, witnesses silenced, a ship that sailed into myth, and in that void, imagination thrives. Maybe the Eldridge never left its harbor, or maybe, for a few fractured minutes, it sailed through dimensions humanity was never meant to touch. So as you rest, imagine the sea at night, calm, dark, endless. Imagine a ship gliding across the waves, wrapped in a shimmer of green light. One moment it is there, the next it is gone, leaving only silence and ripples behind. Let that silence cradle you now, carrying you gently, not across time, but into sleep. Part 19. Theory 10, the Montauk Project. Part A. If the Philadelphia experiment was the spark, then the Montauk Project is the wildfire it ignited, hidden. At the far eastern tip of Long Island sits Camp Hero, a decommissioned Air Force base whose rusting radar tower still rises like a sentinel against the sky. Officially, it was a coastal defense station, monitoring the seas during the Cold War. Unofficially, it is said to be the site of some of the strangest and darkest experiments ever conducted on American soil. For decades, locals whispered about strange activity at Montauk, lights glowing beneath the earth at night, hum that carried on the wind, too low and steady to be generators, dogs that refused to enter certain areas of the forest surrounding the base. Some claimed that after the gates closed in the 1980s, trucks still entered by night, carrying supplies into tunnels no one admitted existed. Preston Nichols, a self-described whistleblower, fueled the fire in the 1990s when he published the Montauk Project, Experiments in Time. In its pages, he claimed that the government, building on the research from the Philadelphia experiment, had expanded into realms far beyond invisibility. They experimented with psychic amplification chairs wired to machines that magnified human thought, attempting to turn imagination into reality. Test subjects, often children, were trained to focus, to project, to tear holes into space and time with the force of their minds. Nichols told of Montauk boys, children abducted or orphaned, raised in secret beneath the base, conditioned, programmed, forced to participate in psychological tests and time manipulation experiments. They were taught to concentrate until images formed in reality, to bend perception, to create portals. He described seeing men walk through a shimmering arch and vanish, only to return claiming they had been gone for years, though only minutes passed outside. For Eric, a fisherman from Montauk who grew up near Camp Hero, the legends felt like background noise until he experienced something himself. One evening, while casting nets at dusk, he watched the radar tower. It had been dark and dormant for years, but suddenly a low hum drifted across the water. Lights flickered around the tower, pulsing in rhythm. The air grew heavy, static crawling across his skin. Then, for a moment, the horizon bent. The lighthouse, in the distance, shimmered, stretching and twisting like a reflection in disturbed water. His net slipped from his hands as he stared, paralyzed. Then, just as suddenly, it was gone. The tower was dark once more. Conspiracy theorists say Montauk was about more than psychic experiments. They whisper of time tunnels opening into past and future, of soldiers stepping into glowing corridors and emerging in decades not yet lived. of creatures pulled from human minds, monsters imagined by test subjects that clawed their way into physical form. The most famous tale describes the Montauk monster, a beast that rampaged through the facility before the project was shut down. Nichols claimed it was conjured by a child, his thoughts magnified by the psychic chair until imagination became flesh. Skeptics dismiss these as fantasies, but the legends endure because the base itself endures. Camp Hero is real. Its tower is real. Its tunnels, now sealed, still draw trespassers who swear they hear voices echoing from the depths. One group of explorers reported finding scorch marks on the walls, as though something burned its way out. Another claimed their watchers stopped. Working within minutes of stepping underground, Eric avoided the base after that night. But sometimes, while out on the water, he heard it again, that low hum, carrying across the waves. He told no one, but each time he heard it, he dropped his nets and steered home, unwilling to test whether the horizon might bend again. Asterisk, if the Philadelphia experiment was the spark, then the Montauk project is the wildfire it ignited. Hidden at the far eastern tip of Long Island sits Camp Hero, a decommissioned Air Force base whose rusting radar tower still rises like a sentinel against the sky. Officially, it was a coastal defense station, monitoring the seas during the Cold War. Unofficially, it is said to be the site of some of the strangest and darkest experiments ever conducted on American soil. For decades, locals whispered about strange activity at Montauk. Lights glowing beneath the earth at night. Hum that carried on the wind, too low and steady to be generators. Dogs that refused to enter certain areas of the forest surrounding the base. Some claimed that after the gates closed in the 1980s, trucks still entered by night, carrying supplies into tunnels no one admitted existed. Preston Nichols, a self-described whistleblower, fueled the fire in the 1990s when he published the Montauk Project, Experiments in Time. In its pages, he claimed that the government, building on the research from the Philadelphia experiment, had expanded into realms far beyond invisibility. They experimented with psychic amplification chairs wired to machines that magnified human thought, attempting to turn imagination into reality. Test subjects, often children, were trained to focus, to project, to tear holes into space and time with the force of their minds. Nichols told of Montauk boys, children abducted or orphaned, raised in secret beneath the base, conditioned, programmed, forced to participate in psychological tests and time manipulation experiments. They were taught to concentrate until images formed in reality, to bend perception, to create portals. He described seeing men walk through a shimmering arch and vanish, only to return claiming they had been gone for years, though only minutes passed outside. For Eric, a fisherman from Montauk who grew up near Camp Hero, the legends felt like background noise until he experienced something himself. One evening, while casting nets at dusk, he watched the radar tower. It had been dark and dormant for years, but suddenly a low hum drifted across the water. Lights flickered around the tower, pulsing in rhythm. The air grew heavy, static crawling across his skin. Then, for a moment, the horizon bent. The lighthouse, in the distance, shimmered, stretching and twisting like a reflection in disturbed water. His net slipped from his hands as he stared, paralyzed. Then, just as suddenly, it was gone. The tower was dark once more. Conspiracy theorists say Montauk was about more than psychic experiments. They whisper of time tunnels opening into past and future, of soldiers stepping into glowing corridors and emerging in decades not yet lived, of creatures pulled from human minds, monsters imagined by test subjects that clawed their way into physical form. The most famous tale describes the Montauk monster, a beast that rampaged through the facility before the project was shut down. Nichols claimed it was conjured by a child, his thoughts magnified by the psychic chair until imagination became flesh. Skeptics dismiss these as fantasies, but the legends endure because the base itself endures. Camp Hero is real. Its tower is real. Its tunnels, now sealed, still draw trespassers who swear they hear voices echoing from the depths. One group of explorers reported finding scorch marks on the walls, as though something burned its way out. Another claimed their watches stopped working within minutes of stepping underground. Eric avoided the base after that night, but sometimes, while out on the water, he heard it again, that low hum, carrying across the waves. He told no one, but each time he heard it, he dropped his nets and steered home, unwilling to test whether the horizon might bend again. Part 20. Theory 10, the Montauk Project. Part B, Versaua expandida e densa. The story of Montauk does not end with a radar tower or whispers of psychic chairs. To those who believe, the base beneath Camp Hero was not merely an extension of Philadelphia, but its evolution, a place where the boundaries between science, mind, and reality itself were pushed until they bled into one another. And the most disturbing detail of all is that, unlike so many other conspiracies, Montauk still stands. You can walk the grounds, see the rusting tower, feel the unease that clings to the earth. The stage is real, and that makes the story harder to dismiss. Nichols described the project in layers. On the surface, basic research in electromagnetic fields, building on what was learned decades earlier when the eldritch shimmered in its green haze. Deeper down, experiments in thought amplification, testing whether the human mind, when boosted by machines, could reach beyond its cage of flesh. And further still, the deliberate tearing of time and space, tunnels into other realities, the summoning of things that should never have crossed into ours. He wrote of the Montauk chair, a device that used coils and crystals to magnify psychic ability. Children were the primary subjects, he claimed, because their imaginations were more malleable, their minds easier to bend. They sat in the chair, wired with electrodes, their thoughts projected outward. At first, the results were flickering on screens, shapes forming briefly in the air. But with training, the children learned to hold focus, to sustain the visions. Soon those visions were not just seen, but touched. Objects imagined became objects that could be measured, however unstable. Reality itself began to bend beneath the weight of thought. Lena, the journalist who had once chased reptilian conspiracies, later turned her attention to Montauk. She interviewed a man who claimed to be one of those children. He was in his 40s now, his voice steady but eyes restless. He remembered long corridors beneath the base, sterile white rooms where he was, led by men in uniforms with no names. He remembered sitting in a chair surrounded by humming machines, told to picture a ball of light, to make it brighter, stronger, until the room itself glowed. At first I thought I was pretending, he said. Then one day, the ball was really there. I could feel heat on my face, and the men clapped. He described nightmares that never left him, visions of corridors stretching into infinity, doors that opened into empty voids, voices that spoke inside his head in languages he did not understand. Sometimes, when he was older, he swore he saw those corridors again, not in dreams but in waking life. flickering at the edge of his vision. "I think they left something open," he whispered, "and I think part of me never came back." Other alleged survivors spoke of time tunnels. They claimed the base used massive generators to tear holes in space-time, corridors of light that could be walked through. Some said they saw Roman soldiers on the other side. Others said they glimpsed the future cities in ruins, skies filled with machines that did not yet exist. One man claimed he stepped into the tunnel and awoke. In 1983, though for him only minutes had passed, his watch had stopped, his body felt weightless, and when he returned, the men in the lab looked terrified, not triumphant. Nichols wrote of the most infamous incident, the summoning of the Beast of Montauk. In 1983, he claimed one of the children projected a creature from his imagination, a monster born of fear and rage. The machine amplified it until it became physical, rampaging through the base. Alarms blared, walls shook, and in panic, the project was shut down. The tunnels were sealed, the chair dismantled, the files destroyed. Yet rumors persist that some of the technology was moved elsewhere to continue under new names, in new facilities. Skeptics argue that Nichols' accounts are delusions, science fiction dressed as memory. They point out inconsistencies, lack of hard evidence, the impossibility of children conjuring matter from thought. And yet, the stories persist. Camp Hero is real. The radar tower is real. The sealed tunnels are real. And for those who trespass, the strangeness is real too. Explorers describe feelings of dread, nausea, sudden headaches, as though the ground itself resists intrusion. Some swear they hear machines still humming deep below, though the base has been abandoned for decades. Lena herself visited Montauk. She stood beneath the tower, the metal rusting but still imposing, like a monument to something unspoken. As the wind rattled the steel, she felt her teeth buzz faintly, as though a low frequency vibrated through the air. She walked near the sealed entrances, thick concrete doors half buried in earth. One of them bore scratches, deep gouges that did not look like the work of tools. She pressed her ear to the cold surface. For a moment, she swore she heard a hum, faint, rhythmic, patient. She stumbled back, heart racing, and did not approach again. The Montauk project ties into so many other conspiracies it becomes a web. Survivors link it to MKUltra, the CIA's mind control experiments of the 1950s and 60s. They say Montauk was the successor, the place where the failures of drug-induced programming were replaced with machines and psychic amplification. Others connect it to Philadelphia, claiming the same scientists continued their work here, finally achieving what they only brushed against aboard the Eldritch. Still others weave it into stories of alien contact, arguing that the technology itself was not ours, but borrowed or given. And then there is the theory of time manipulation. Believers insist Montauk achieved time travel, though imperfect, dangerous, and unstable. They point to strange anomalies in local history disappearances, records that contradict people who appear in photos decades before they were born. They whisper of soldiers sent into the tunnels who never returned, or who returned decades older, though only days had passed outside. For Eric, the fisherman who once saw the horizon bend, the stories became unbearable. Each time he sailed near Camp Hero, he felt the hum. He stopped going east altogether, preferring longer routes around the island rather than past the shadow of the tower. But at night, as he lay in bed, sometimes he dreamed of walking through the dunes, finding a door open, the tunnels lit with sterile white light. He would hear children laughing, a sound far too cheerful for the weight it carried. Then, from deeper within, a roar. Always the same roar. He would wake before he saw its source, drenched in sweat, his pulse racing as though he had run for miles. The Montauk Project endures because it sits in the uncanny valley of conspiracy, too bizarre to accept fully, too rooted in real places, and real whispers to dismiss outright. Camp Hero is not a myth. It is a ruin, standing silent against the sea, holding its secrets. And that silence speaks louder than denial. So as you close your eyes tonight, imagine the distant crash of waves against Long Island's shore. Imagine the radar tower silhouetted against the moon, its steel bones humming with forgotten power. Imagine tunnels that lead into darkness, where echoes of voices still linger, faint and restless. Then let them fade. Whatever hum remains beneath Montauk does not reach you here. Here there is only your breath, your pulse, your dreams, safe and untangled from the weight of conspiracies. Let the tunnels seal. Let the tower fall silent. And let sleep rise to claim you, steady and kind. Asterisk, deep beneath our feet lies stone. Magma, the heavy heart of the earth, so science tells us. Yet for centuries, myths have whispered of something stranger, that our planet is not solid at all, but hollow. That within its shell lies another world, vast caverns lit by inner suns, inhabited by civilizations older and wiser than ours. To most, the hollow earth is a metaphor, a fantasy. But to those who believe, it is a map, a guide to hidden realms, just beyond reach. The theory has roots stretching back to ancient myth. Many cultures tell of underworlds, not of death, but of life. The Greeks spoke of Hades, vast lands beneath the surface. Norse legends describe Svartalfheim, a subterranean world of dwarves and crafts. Buddhist texts tell of Agartha, a hidden kingdom of enlightenment below the Himalayas. And the Cherokee, the Hopi, and other native peoples carry stories of ancestors who emerge from caverns, guided by beings of light. To believers, these myths are not imagination, but memory. In the 17th century, scientist Edmund Halley, the same man who charted the comet that bears his name, suggested the Earth might be hollow, with concentric shells rotating around a luminous core. He proposed this to explain strange compass variations, but his idea took root in the imagination. Later, in the 19th century, John Cleves Sims Jr., a U.S. Army officer, became the most famous advocate of hollow Earth. He lectured across the country, insisting the poles were open gateways into the interior, vast holes where explorers could enter and find another world. He even petitioned Congress to fund an expedition. They never agreed, but his theory refused to die by the 20th century. Hollow Earth became a rich vein for conspiracies. Stories circulated of Nazis searching for hidden realms beneath Antarctica, seeking advanced technology from inner civilizations. Some claimed Admiral Richard Byrd, an American explorer, flew into one of these openings in 1947. His supposed secret diary describes a land lush and green, with animals thought extinct, and a city of beings who told him humanity was not yet ready for contact. Officially, Byrd's flights never mentioned such discoveries, but the diary, whether hoax or truth, spread through conspiracy circles like wildfire. For Mara, a spelunker who had spent years exploring caves in South America, the legend was irresistible. She followed whispers of vast caverns said to stretch for miles, deeper than any charted maps. In one expedition, she and her team descended through a narrow shaft until the air grew warm and heavy. The walls shimmered with minerals that reflected light like stars. Hours in, they reached a chamber so vast her headlamp could not find the ceiling. The silence was overwhelming, a void that seemed alive. In her journal, she wrote, "It felt less like being inside Earth, and more like standing on the edge of another sky." Believers in Hollow Earth often describe an inner sun, glowing core that lights entire landscapes. The land is said to be fertile, rivers flowing with clarity, air thick with life. Some claim the beings there are giants, tall and radiant, watching humanity with patience. Others say they are survivors of Atlantis, a civilization that did not sink, but moved inward, choosing secrecy over extinction. A few even claim UFOs are not visitors from the stars, but craft emerging from hidden entrances. Their pilots, guardians of the inner world. Mara never saw giants, but she could not shake the feeling of presence. In the vast chamber, she swore she heard faint echoes not made by her team rhythms to steady, too deliberate, like footsteps in the distance. She turned off her headlamp and sat in darkness, the warmth pressing against her skin. In that black silence, she thought she saw a faint glow, as though the stone itself breathed light. When she blinked, it was gone. Skeptics argue Hollow Earth is impossibly our planet's density. Seismic data, gravity, all confirm a solid mantle and molten core. Caverns exist, yes, but no world could stretch within. Yet believers counter with anomalies, compass readings that drift near the poles, strange sounds recorded deep underground, entire cave systems still unexplored. They point to satellite images of Antarctica where, for brief moments, vast dark circles appear before being replaced by white overlays. The entrances are there, they insist. They're just hidden. Some even tie Hollow Earth to modern politics. They claim secret bases tunnel downward, not upward. That underground facilities in Nevada, Siberia, and the Andes are not built by humans alone, but connect to deeper networks carved long before us. Rumors of trains that travel faster than planes, linking cities beneath the surface, hint at more than infrastructure, they hint at coexistence. Mara left caving after that expedition. She told her friends she had seen enough, that she had satisfied her curiosity. But in her private notes, she wrote something different. There is more down there than stone. I felt it. Something lives below, something vast and patient. If we ever find it, I fear it will not be a discovery, but a return. The Hollow Earth endures because it appeals to something primal. We stand on the ground, trusting it as solid, certain. But what if beneath it lies another sky, another horizon, another civilization waiting? The thought unsettles, but also soothes. Perhaps we are not alone. Perhaps we are not the pinnacle. Perhaps the Earth itself is more alive than we can imagine. So, tonight, as you close your eyes, imagine the soil beneath you not as rock, but as a cradle. Imagine vast caverns glowing softly, rivers flowing in silence, a hidden sun warming an unseen world. Let the thought of that secret Earth soothe you, reminding you that mysteries still remain, that wonder has not yet ended. And let that wonder carry you deeper, past the surface, into rest. What if everything you see, everything you feel, even the thoughts racing through your mind at this very moment, are not truly yours at all but lines of code, instructions running inside an unfathomably complex program. The simulation hypothesis is one of the most modern conspiracies, yet also one of the oldest questions dressed in digital clothes. Is reality real, or are we dreaming inside someone else's machine? The idea has existed for centuries. Philosophers like Plato imagined the world as shadows on a cave wall, mere illusions of a deeper truth. Descartes questioned whether a deceiving demon might be tricking his senses. Hindu texts spoke of Maya, the grand illusion that veils the true nature of existence. But in the 21st century, with computers in every pocket and virtual worlds indistinguishable from reality, the hypothesis gained a new, unsettling edge. Oxford philosopher Nick Bostrom formalized it in 2003. His argument was simple, almost elegant. If civilizations survive long enough, they will eventually create simulations of reality so perfect that the beings inside would believe themselves real. And if such simulations can be made, then there would be billions of them stacked on top of one another, while only one base reality exists. Statistically, the odds that you and I are in the true reality are almost zero. We are far more likely to be simulations ourselves, running in someone else's experiment. To most, this is an abstract thought experiment. To others, it is the ultimate conspiracy, proof that glitches, déjà vu, and impossible coincidences are not accidents, but signs of the code slipping. Jonah, a software engineer, never cared much for conspiracies until one night his life glitched. He was driving home when the stoplight ahead flickered, shifting from green to red in less than a second. He slammed the brakes, heart pounding. But what froze him was the figure at the crosswalk. A man in a grey coat. Jonah blinked and the man was gone. Not walking away, not running, just gone. Cars behind him honked. The light turned green, and he drove on, shaking, replaying the moment in his mind. He later checked the traffic cameras online. The footage showed his car braking at the red, but no man at all. From that day forward, Jonah began noticing smaller things. Numbers repeating in strange places, 3:33 on the clock, receipts totaling $33.33, phone calls dropping at exactly the same second each time. He told himself it was coincidence, but coincidence piled on coincidence until denial felt more absurd than belief. One night, as he lay in bed, he whispered, "If this is a simulation, give me a sign." The light bulb in his lamp flickered, then went dark. The simulation hypothesis intertwines with conspiracy through the idea of control. If we are simulations, then who runs us? Some say advanced humans in the future, testing their past like a history lesson. Others suggest alien intelligences, farming civilizations as experiments. A darker idea that our world is entertainment, a game for beings beyond comprehension, who watch us struggle and suffer as we binge-watch dramas on a screen. Jonah joined online forums where others shared glitch stories. People described strangers freezing mid-step, only to resume seconds later. Birds suspended in the air as if paused. Rain that fell in perfect squares, leaving untouched patches of dry pavement. One woman swore she walked through her own living room only to find herself outside on the street, with no memory of how she got there. Another described meeting the same stranger in different cities on the same day, wearing the same clothes, saying the same words. Science, too, entertains the possibility. Researchers have found that the universe, at its smallest scales, behaves discretely quantized, pixelated as though it runs on code. Others point to the cosmic microwave background, the faint radiation from the Big Bang, and claim they see patterns too regular, like compression artifacts in an image. The universe is not continuous, one physicist said. It looks programmed. Jonah began testing reality. He flipped coins thousands of times, recording results, searching for anomalies. He left notes for himself in hidden places, checking later if they were altered. He once shouted into the night sky, "I know you're watching." His neighbors complained, but he didn't care. Part of him hoped whoever was running the simulation might respond, and sometimes he thought they did. Once, when overwhelmed by anxiety, he muttered, "Please, slow down." The power in his apartment cut out. Silence filled the air. His heart raced as he laughed nervously. "That's not real," he whispered. "That can't be real." But deep down, he wasn't sure. The simulation hypothesis is terrifying, not because it robs reality of meaning, but because it suggests meaning itself might be manufactured. Every love, every loss, every joy lines of code, instructions in memory. And yet, would that make them less real? If you laugh, if you cry, if you feel, does it matter if the fabric beneath is digital? Jonah eventually stopped searching for glitches. He realized that whether or not the world was simulated, he still had to live it. But sometimes, when the clock hits 3:33, he smiles uneasily, wondering if the programmer is winking at him. So as you drift tonight, let the thoughts settle gently. Whether a world of stone or world of code, it has cradled you until now. The walls hold firm, the sky stretches wide, and your dreams are yours, simulated or not. Let the glitches fade into quiet, let the numbers dissolve into dark, and let sleep claim you, real as anything you've ever known. You have journeyed through shadows tonight, through whispers of experiments, hidden bases, satellites that may not be ours, and stories that stretch from the deepest caves to the furthest stars. Each theory, each mystery, a thread woven into the fabric of human imagination. And now, as the night grows deeper, it is time to let those threads unravel, one by one, until only silence remains. Imagine yourself standing on a shoreline at night. The sea before you is endless, black and silver beneath the moon. Each wave that rolls in carries with it the weight of secrets some old, some new, some that may never be spoken. The air is cool, the horizon calm. You listen as the tide moves, in rhythm, steady and patient, like the slow breath of the earth itself. Each sound pulls you further from the noise of the day, further from the restless thoughts that once filled your mind. You remember the stories of MK Ultra's shadows, of the dead internet where voices may not be real, of corridors called the back rooms, and colliders that hum beneath the soil. You remember the skies that ripple with lights, the satellites that drift like watchers, the deserts that guard their secrets, the rulers whose faces might not be their own. And you remember how each tale, no matter how unsettling, ended the same way, not with answers, but with mystery, with the space to wonder, with silence. Let that silence surround you now. Let the edges of the stories blur, as though they are written in sand, washed away by the tide. What matters is not whether they are true, but how they carried you here into stillness, into rest. Take a slow breath. Inhale through your nose. Feel the air expand in your chest, cool and calm. Hold it for a moment. Then exhale gently, letting go. Each breath you take now is slower, deeper, like footsteps descending a staircase. With every step, you leave behind another layer of noise, of thought, of waking concern. Down you go, one step, 2 steps, 3. Deeper into quiet, deeper into peace. Above you, the stars glow faintly. You realize how small your worries are beneath such a vast sky. All the mysteries you heard tonight, the secret bases, the tunnels, the experiments, the satellites, none of them weigh on you now. They are stories drifting like clouds, fading into the horizon. All that remains is the comfort of stillness, the soft pull of sleep. Now picture yourself lying on a field at night. Grass cool beneath you, sky endless above. You hear the faintest sound, the gentle patter of rain, far away at first, then closer. Each drop is steady, delicate, falling onto leaves, onto earth, onto stone. The sound grows, not loud, but rich, filling the air with a rhythm that soothes. Rain has always been a lullaby, nature's soft drum, calming hearts and quieting minds. The rain begins to fall around you now. Imagine it cool and cleansing, washing away the weight of thought. With every drop, your muscles loosen, your forehead smooths, your shoulders sink, your breath flows easier. The world outside fades, leaving only the sound of water and the steady beat of your heart. Let your mind wander with the rain. Each drop carries a story. Away one falls and takes with it a shadow of fear. Another falls, carrying away doubt. Another, carrying away the restless turning of thoughts that no longer serve you. Soon the stories are gone, the conspiracies dissolved into mist. All that remains is rain, steady and infinite. If you find your thoughts drifting back, let them. Watch them arrive, then watch them float away on the stream of rain. You don't need to hold them. You don't need to resist. They pass like leaves in water, carried gently beyond your reach. And as the rain continues, you feel warmth rising within you, safe, sheltered. You realize that mysteries do not need to be solved tonight. They can rest, just as you will rest. The universe will keep its secrets. The earth will hum. The sky will hold its lights. The sea will keep its depths. You, for now, only need to sleep. The rain thickens into a steady curtain, soft but full. Its rhythm is constant, infinite, like the ticking of a clock without hands. Time loses meaning here. Minutes and hours blur. There is no past, no future, only this sound, this breath, this peace. And now, as your body grows heavy, as your breath slows, let yourself drift completely. Let the sound of the rain fill the spaces where thought once lived. Let the world dissolve into darkness, gentle and welcoming. Sleep rises like a tide, lifting you, carrying you, pulling you into depths where even conspiracies cannot follow. Rest now, rest deeply. Rest as though the night belongs to you alone. For in this moment, it does.